been under the weather last week. We were supposed to actually have communion last week, but I just didn't feel right about doing that because I wasn't sure what was wrong with me. I had gotten tested for COVID and all that kind of stuff, and everything was fine. So I think it was allergies. I think it's peanuts around my house, which is why I'm a little clogged up today. We have, people say, well, Florida doesn't have seasons. Yes, we do. We have peanut, cotton. These are seasons. You can just tell by the allergies. We're working our way through the Synoptic Gospels. And I say it like that because the Synoptic Gospels are Matthew, Mark, and Luke. John kind of dances to his own beat. We're going to actually spend most of our time in John today, though, because here's the thing about the Synoptic Gospels. You have to kind of read them as a group. All of them together tell a fuller picture of what's going on. And sometimes you even have to include John. So we're working our way through the Synoptic Gospels, and we're kind of doing this little mini-series right now on the 7 times that Jesus said, I am. I am literally is the name of God. It is Yahweh. It's the sound of breathing. It's the sound of breathing. Every breath you take, your entire life, from the first moment when the doctor slapped you on the hiney when you were born to the last breath you take, you are saying the name of God. How you like that, atheist? It's the sound of breathing. It's the name of God. In fact, here's what God said about it. We talked about this a couple weeks ago. Moses said to God, this is back in Exodus, Moses said to God, suppose I go to the Israelites and I say to them, the God of your fathers has sent me to you. And they asked me, so what's his name? Then what shall I tell them? And God said to Moses, here's what he said, I am who I am. Or I am that I am. In other words, he's saying Yahweh is Yahweh. And so what was incredible whenever Jesus made these I am statements, he was claiming Yahweh. These are not just sound bites. This is not just like Jesus was sitting around on the Mount of Olives going, you know what? This will preach good one day. Listen, this would make a great Bible study or a Sunday school lesson one day. What if I just say something like, I am the bread of life? How cool. That would make a good sermon. No. These are real events. These are real people. And Jesus is answering a question. This is a real 24-hour day that we're going to be talking about today. And there are real questions. And there are real statements. And there are real issues that Jesus is dealing with. Now, normally, when Jesus is dealing with issues, who are we talking about? We're normally talking about the Pharisees, the religious leaders. But today's different. Today, Jesus is having a little bit of issue with the crowd. And the crowd is different from the disciples. And so if you came here to hear about little baby Jesus today, and sweet little baby Jesus, you're not getting him today, because today he's drawing a line in the sand and he's saying, listen, there's a difference between somebody who just wants to be in the crowd and somebody who wants to be a disciple. Because somebody that's in the crowd, they're just wanting a little bit of Jesus. Just a taste. A little bit on Sunday morning. Listen, how little can I get away with and still be saved? But what I really want to do is I want to stay on God's good side so that he will give me stuff. What I really want is just, God, make my life better. And it's all about the physical. And Jesus is like, I didn't just come to make your life better. I'm better than life. And I don't want you to have a little bit of me. I want you to feed on me. So he's going to, by the end of this, get very offensive. And winds up running off a lot of the crowd. But to understand this whole 24-hour period of the day, we have to back up. Like I said earlier, we got to back up 1,500 years. 1,500 years before this, God had just led the Israelites out of slavery, like physical, literal slavery in Egypt. And he led them out through a series of miracles that they saw with their own eyes. And then he topped it off by parting the Red Sea, and they walked through on dry ground, and then the sea collapsed, and it killed their enemies. They saw this with their own eyes. And 3 days later, they're whining. Oh, we had it so much better back in Egypt. You should have just let us stay there and just let us die there. 3 days. 3 days they wanted to go back to their old life after God had delivered them. Exodus 16:3 says, if only we had died by the Lord's hand in Egypt. 3 days after they saw these miracles. Because there we sat around pots of meat and ate all the food we want. They made their slavery sound so wonderful, don't they? See, that's our whole problem. Bless you. That's our whole problem. We don't remember the bad stuff. We don't remember what slavery was like. We don't, when we become a follower of Christ, a lot of times what happens is, just like the seed that is planted on the rocky soil, if it's shallow, we wind up going right back. We go right back to where we used to be. There we sit around pots of meat and we ate all the food we wanted, but you have brought us out into the desert to starve this entire assembly to death. But instead of anger, God responds with grace. In Exodus 16:4, he says, okay, here's what I'm going to do. I'm going to rain down bread from heaven for you. And I want the people to go out each day and gather enough for that day. Every morning when they woke up, it was like a new sermon. And the sermon was, you can trust me. I will provide for you today. But this manna, this bread from heaven, had some rules. This is going to be important later when Jesus declares, I'm that manna. The manna had some rules. First rule is, you can take as much as you want. You can take all the manna. Listen, if you need a lot, take a lot. If you just need a little bit, take a little bit. You can have as much as you want. There is an abundance of manna for everybody. But here's the rule. You cannot hold it overnight. You cannot hoard it till the next day. It is only good for today. Think about when Jesus taught us the Lord's Prayer. What did he say? Give us today our daily bread. Why would he say that? Why wouldn't he say, God, give me for the next 10 years everything I need right now? Because he wants us to trust him each and every day. How many of y'all got a cell phone? How many of y'all charged your cell phone last Sunday? Nobody? Raise your hand. I'm serious. Did you charge your cell phone last Sunday? Is that the last time you charged it? But if you only spent time with God last Sunday and you haven't talked to him all week, your manna is rotten. It is only good for today. If you want a real relationship with Jesus Christ, it's just like that manna. He gives you everything that you need for today, but you need to engage. They had to go out and they had to gather up the manna every single day. It's not enough to come in here and get the bread of life on Sunday and like, whew, that's enough for me. I'll see you next Sunday. See, that's crowd mentality. That's what the crowd was doing that Jesus is going to be dealing with. The crowd was just like, okay, I got a little bit of it. I just want to taste. I don't want to like feed on you. That's crazy. I just want a taste of Jesus. But what I really want is you just to make my life better. That's what we all want. The crowd just wanted him to make his life better. But we're going to look at that 24-hour period of day that 24-hour period in John chapter 6 right now. And what you're going to see is that Jesus is not interested in you being part of a crowd. He did not come to draw a crowd. He did, but the crowd just wanted him to perform another miracle, to do something to make their life better. He was not interested in the crowd, though. He was interested in making disciples. That's our job here. Our job is not to draw a bigger crowd. Listen, if y'all want us to just draw a big crowd here, that's easy. I can put on that sign out there today that next Sunday there's going to be a monster truck rally in the back 40. I promise you we will have thousands of people here next week. Drawing a crowd is easy. But the crowd doesn't like hard messages. The crowd doesn't like tough lessons. And so Jesus is about to run off a big part of the crowd because his teaching is about to get tough. And he's going to let us know, listen, I don't want you to be a crowd. I want you to be a disciple that makes disciples. Because the crowd is just like, what's in it for me? And the disciple is like, God, what can I do for you? So let's get into it. In John chapter 6, verse 1, he says, and sometime after this, and the after this is Jesus had sent out the disciples. We'll say the apostles, keep it straight. He had sent out the apostles 2 by 2. And he had sent them out in 6 different directions. And he said, okay, listen, I'm going to give you a gift. I'm going to give you like a little gift. And I want you to take this little gift, and here's what I want you to do. I want you to go out and I want you to preach, and I want you to teach, and I want you to make disciples. And I'm going to give you the authority to cast out demons. I'm going to give you the authority to perform miracles and to heal the sick. And he sent them out, and they came back, and they're all excited. And so sometime after this, Jesus crossed to the far shore of the Sea of Galilee. That is the Sea of Tiberias. And a great crowd of people followed him because they saw the signs that he had performed by healing the sick. That's why they were following him. Then Jesus went up on a mountainside and he sat down with his disciples. The Jewish Passover festival was near, and when Jesus looked up and saw a great crowd coming toward him, he said to Philip, "Where shall we buy bread for all these people to eat?" Now he only asked this to test Philip. For he had already had in mind what he was going to do. And so Philip answered him, "It would take more than half a year's wages to buy enough bread for everyone to even have a bite." This whole scene, this whole day is leading up to the main event. The disciples, remember, had just come back for performing all these miracles. And Jesus singles out Philip. Why did he single out Philip? I looked it up. Philip was the only one from there. Philip was from here. Philip was the one that knew where the Piggly Wiggly was. And so Jesus asked him, "Hey, where can I get enough food to feed all these people?" And he's like, "Lord, there's no way. Man, if we took half a year's wages, there's no way we could feed all of these people. We couldn't even give them a bite for that much." They had just done all these miracles. Jesus wasn't trying to embarrass them. He was trying to teach us a lesson about being a disciple. Everything in the Bible, everything in the Old Testament testifies about Jesus. Here's what Jesus said. John 5:39. "You study the scriptures diligently because you think that in them you have eternal life." Look at what it says. "These are the very scriptures that testify about me." Everything in the Old Testament is about Jesus, yet you refuse to come to me to have life. The crowd showed up because they had seen the signs that Jesus had performed by healing the sick. They were willing to follow anybody who would take care of their physical needs. And so the Bible says that Jesus felt sorry for them, and he shows them and the apostles that he is the fulfillment of the manna from heaven, and that he can provide for your physical needs, but that this life is temporary, and what he is really interested in is your internal needs. So what he does is he performs another miracle in front of them, and he feeds them. And he does it in an incredible way. They take a little boy, or they find a little boy, and he's got a few small loaves. Don't think like big bread. He's got a few small, this is his lunch, a few small loaves and a couple little fish. We're not talking about big bass. We're talking about a couple little sardines. And probably what that was for, it wasn't even really for eating the fish. The fish was to wipe on the bread, just to give the bread a little bit of flavor. And in Mark's gospel, here's what it says. In Mark's gospel, it says, not that Jesus handed out this food. It says Jesus blessed it, this gift, and he gave it to the disciples for them to pass out. That's important. Jesus is making disciples. Here's what happened. Now this is in my mind's eye. This is the way I see it. I don't imagine that he blessed it and he handed out 12 full baskets of food. I don't think that's how it happened. What I think happened is he blessed it and he gave a little pinch in 12 different baskets. And they're like, what am I going to do with this? That's not enough. This is embarrassing. Look at this little bitty gift that I have from God. What am I going to do with this little bitty gift? There's nothing. What is the point? Now, if I had a big basket like he's got, I could do some stuff then. But God only gave me this little bitty thing. And what happened? When they were faithful with this little piece, it magnified. And it grew. And it grew. And every time they handed out this little piece, there was more. Until in the end, all the baskets were full that they brought back in. If you were faithful with that little tiny piece of bread, that little piece of gift that God gave you that you think is insignificant, if you are faithful with that little thing, God will bless it. And that gift was not for you in the first place. The gift is for them. That's the difference between a disciple and the crowd. The crowd is like, feed me. I want my basket full. And a disciple says, God, you gave me this little bit. How can I be a blessing? Jesus is not looking to make more crowd. There's plenty of crowd. He's looking to make more disciples. Verse 12 of John 6, he says, and when they all had enough, to eat, listen, the manna, you take in as much as you want. When they all had enough to eat, he said to his disciples, now gather the pieces that are left over and let nothing be wasted. Do not waste the talent and the gifts that God has given you. Verse 14, the day continues. After the people saw the sign that Jesus performed, they began to say, surely this is the prophet. Did they say, oh, he's got to be God? No, they said, oh, this is the prophet who is to come into the world. And Jesus, knowing that they intended to come and to make him king by force, Jesus withdrew again to a mountain by himself. They were only interested in what Jesus could do for them physically. Hey, look what this guy just did. Let's keep him here and make him our king. Make him work for us. That's the essence of what they're saying. They're like, I'm not interested in being a follower of this Jesus and going where he says and doing the things that he wants me to do. I'm only interested in getting Jesus to do the things that I want him to do for me. Listen, we can all have that kind of mentality. We can all have a mentality of a crowd with God. Lord, listen. I need you to bless me. Listen, I came to church Sunday. I put some money in the plate. God, look at what I did. Listen, I need you to bless my 401k. I need you to bless me physically. I need you to bless my health. I need you to bless my wealth. I need you to bless my family. I need you to bless all these guys. There's nothing wrong with praying for these things. There's nothing wrong. But if the only reason that you want Jesus in your life is because of what you can get out of him, you have missed the point. This life is not about what God can do for me. It's about my relationship with him. That's the difference between a crowd and a disciple. So at this point in the day, the apostles of Jesus, they're still exhausted. And in Mark it says that Jesus sent them in a boat to Capernaum so that they could get away from the crowds and to get some rest. And Jesus, it says in Mark, was going to stay and he was going to dismiss the crowds and spend some time alone in prayer. But then we're going to pick it up in John chapter 6, verse 16. It says, and then when evening came, his disciples went down to the lake where they got into the boat and they set off across the lake for Capernaum. Crossing the lake again. And by now it was dark and Jesus had not yet joined them. And a strong wind was blowing and the waters grew rough. And when they had rowed about 3 or 4 miles, they saw Jesus approaching the boat, walking on water. And they were frightened. No kidding. But he said to them, it is I, don't be afraid. Now we go to Matthew's gospel. At this point in Matthew, it says that Peter called out to Jesus. I love Peter. He makes me feel so much better about myself. Matthew 14:28. Here's how the story picks up from there. Lord, if it's you, Peter replied, tell me to come to you on the water. Come, Jesus said. And then Peter got down out of the boat and he walked on water and came toward Jesus. But when he saw the wind, he was afraid, and beginning to sink, he cried out, Lord, save me. When I preach this passage, I typically focus on the fact that Peter walked on water. Jesus said, you come to me. And Peter obeyed. And Peter walked on water. We don't give him credit for that. We always focus on the fact that he sank. But he walked on water as long as he was looking at Jesus. But as soon as he took his eyes off Jesus, as soon as he looked down at the storm and the troubles in his life, what happened? He began to sink like a rock, which is really why I think Jesus called him that. But that's not what I want you to focus on today, because there's something else that happened that we have a tendency to read right over. Verse 19, when they had rowed about 3 or 4 miles. Oh, I'm sorry. I'm backed up. I'm messing up the sound room. Matthew 14, verse 31. Immediately, well, verse 30 says, when he saw the wind, he was afraid and beginning to sink. He cried out, Lord, save me. Verse 31, immediately, listen to this. Immediately, Jesus reached out his hand and he caught him. You of little faith, he said, why did you doubt? And when he climbed into the boat, the wind died down. Then those who were in the boat worshiped him, saying, truly you are the Son of God. This is not the first time he calmed the storm. First time he calmed the storm, he was asleep on the boat, and they're like, why? How can he even sleep? We're going to die. And they woke him up, and he spoke, and it calmed down. And they didn't say, you are God. What they said is, who is this? You know, Jesus is about to tell us, I am the manna. Do you know what the word manna literally means? The word manna, when they saw the bread of heaven that God gave them, the manna, it literally means, what is it? That's the literal translation of manna. What is it? Listen, nothing against food banks and stuff like that, but don't name your food bank. What is it? What is it? That's the question. Because when Jesus says, I am the, what is it? That's literally what they said to him. They said, who are you? Even the disciples, the first time that he calmed the sea, they said, who is this? What is it? Manna. The second time, though, he wants to make sure that his disciples are different from the crowd. The crowd is saying, give me something. They're saying, who are you? But at this point, what do the disciples say? This is the Son of God. But here's what I want you to get. When Peter was sinking, right there in front of Jesus, it was Jesus that reached out to Peter and took him by the hand. Just because you obey Jesus as a disciple does not mean your life is going to be perfect and you're going to walk on water all the time. You're going to have storms and you're going to start sinking sometimes and you're going to feel like you're dying. You're going to get sick. You're going to have financial troubles. You're going to have family problems. You're going to have storms in your life. Listen, everybody thinks that one of the most famous Bible verses in the world is the Bible verse where God says, I will never allow more on you than you can handle. That is not in the Bible. That's a lie from Satan. Because what that says is like, if you can't handle it, well, there's something wrong with you. You're going to have times in your life you can't handle. You're going to have storms, even as a disciple of Jesus Christ. Even when he says, come, walk to me, and you do it, you're going to have, the storm didn't stop when Peter got out of the boat, did it? The storm kept raging. Even though he was obeying Jesus, you're going to have bad stuff happen in your life. The difference is, if you have Jesus, he reaches his hand out. And he grabs you. And he will never let go. The manna that came down from heaven that they ate, it was good for a day. It was only good for a day. It only sustained them for one day. And then they were hungry again. And Jesus is forever. We have to stop thinking in the physical realm. Jesus is not just for today, with us today. Of course he wants good stuff for you. Of course he wants to bless. Listen, I pray a blessing over you from the book of Malachi every Sunday when y'all leave here. That God would open the floodgates of heaven and pour out so much blessing you can't contain it all. And I'm serious about that. But a disciple is not bringing in blessings to hoard it for the next day. You bring in the blessing so that you can go and make disciples. That's what we're doing. That's what we're called to do. Down in John verse 25 of chapter 6, it says, here come the crowds. They finally reached the other side, and now the crowds are showing back up. Verse 25, he says, and when they found him on the other side of the lake, they asked him, Rabbi, when did you get here? And Jesus answered, very truly I tell you, you were looking for me not because you saw the signs that I performed, but because you ate the loaves and had your fill. Do not work for food that spoils. Don't work for the things of this world that you can't take with you, but for food that endures to eternal life, which the Son of Man will give you. For on him God the Father has placed his seal of approval. Then they asked him, what? Listen, this is religion. What must we do to do the work that God requires? How little do I have to do to be saved? That's religion. Religion says, okay, listen, if I check these boxes, am I in? If I take this class, if I attend this service, what do I have to do the work that God requires? And here's Jesus' answer in verse 29. The work of God is this, to believe in the one he has sent. And so they ask him, what sign then will you give that we may see it and believe you? Who are you? Listen, you're talking like you're the one. Prove it. You're the Messiah. Prove it. What are you going to do to prove it? What sign then will you give that we may see it and believe you? What will you do? And then they gave him this challenge. Our ancestors ate the manna in the wilderness. As it is written, he gave them bread from heaven to eat. So here's the thing. All the rabbis, all the priests had taught for 1,500 years that when the Messiah comes, the Messiah, just like Moses, the Messiah is going to bring manna from heaven. What they missed is he's not bringing manna from heaven. He is the manna from heaven. Yahweh. So he's fixing to clear it up. Verse 32, Jesus said to them, very truly I tell you, it is not Moses who has given you the bread from heaven. Moses didn't do that. It is my Father who gives you the true bread from heaven. For the bread of God is the bread that comes down from heaven and gives life to the world. And they're like, okay, we want that. Sir, they said, always give us this bread. Yeah, give us that bread. And then he drops the bombshell. Verse 35, he says, then Jesus declared, Yahweh, the bread of life. I am the bread of life. That thing that happened 1,500 years ago was about me. That was to point you to me. Everything about that manna, everything from it coming down from heaven. Listen, it could have just appeared out of the ground. They could have uncovered a rock and had a loaf of bread there. It came from heaven because it was pointing to Jesus coming from heaven. It sustained them throughout the entire wilderness for 40 years of their life. It kept them alive, leading them to the promised land. Just like Jesus. It had a sweetness. They said the Bible says it tasted like a wafer covered in honey. Because Jesus is that good. Jesus is that good. He is not just like sustaining us today. He is pointing us to the promised land. Verse 48. I am the bread of life. Your ancestors ate the manna in the wilderness, and yet they died. But here in me is the bread that comes down from heaven, which anyone who eats it, anyone may eat it and not die. I am the living bread that came down from heaven. Whoever eats this bread will live forever. Stop thinking in the physical. The world is so much bigger. This bread is my flesh, which I give for the life of the world. Then the Jews began to argue sharply among themselves. How can this man give us his flesh to eat? Now I imagine the apostles at this point are like, hey, listen, we got like almost 20,000 people here. That's a big crowd. Listen, things are going good, right? Like stuff is good. We're trending on social media. Things are great. What are you talking about? Eat my flesh. That's crazy talk. Listen, let's just calm down. Let's just back up a little bit. Let's don't run off the people who are seeking. Let's don't do that. And Jesus says, I'm not looking for a crowd. I'm looking for a disciple. And so now he's going to double down. He's like, I don't want you to just nibble. I want you to consume me. John 6:53 says, Jesus said to them, very truly I tell you that unless you eat the flesh of the Son of Man and drink his blood, you have no life in you. Well, that freaked them out. Whoever eats my flesh and drinks my blood has eternal life, and I will raise him up at the last day. For my flesh is real food, and my blood is real drink. And whoever eats my flesh and drinks my blood remains in me, and I in them. Just as the living Father sent me, and I live because of the Father, so the one who feeds, underline that, so the one who feeds on me will live because of me. This is the bread that came down from heaven. Your ancestors ate manna and died. It was physical. But whoever feeds on this bread, the spiritual, will live forever. He doesn't want us to just take a nibble or just have a taste of him. Listen, we're going to have communion in a minute to celebrate him giving his body and his blood for us. But it's not about this physical stuff. It's not about it becoming physically his blood and his body in us. He literally said, listen, I'm talking to you about the spiritual. John 6:60 says, on hearing it, many of his disciples says, that's a hard teaching. You talk about wanting us to feed on you. That's a hard teaching. Who can accept it? And aware that his disciples were grumbling about this, Jesus said to them, does this offend you? This ain't little baby Jesus. He's here to draw a line in the sand. Does this offend you? Then what if you see the Son of Man descend to where he was before? Listen to verse 63. The Spirit gives life, and the flesh counts for nothing. The words I just spoke to you, the words I have spoken to you, they are spirit. Stop thinking in the physical. Stop thinking in the physical. The crowd wants the physical. The crowd just wants a little taste of Jesus. I just want a little bit of Jesus, and I want him to bless me. I want him to listen, if I do this, and I do this, and I do this, then I feel like you might owe me, and you got to bless me. And Jesus is like, no, I want you to feed on me. All of me. All of me. Take me in. Get me out of your head and take me into your heart. Make me part of you and me part of you and you part of me. The words I have spoken to you, they are spirit and they are real life. Yeah, there's some of you who don't believe. Because Jesus knew from the beginning which of them did not believe and those that would betray him. And he went on to say, this is why I told you that no one can come to me unless the Father has enabled him. And from this time, many of his disciples, literally it's the crowd, from this time, many of the crowd turned back and they no longer followed him. It was too hard of a teaching. They didn't want all of Jesus. They just wanted a taste. They just wanted to show up on Sunday morning, check the box, and I don't want you the rest of the week. You're not willing to do that with your cell phone. But that's what you want from your God. Manna means, what is it? Verse 67, we're going to close this out. You do not want to leave too, do you? Jesus asked the 12. And here's Peter, love him. Lord, where are we going to go? You have the words of eternal life. He's not just here to make your life better today. He's here because he's better than life. Not just today, but forever. He will never leave you. He will never forsake you. He will never let you down. In your darkest times, even though you're following him with all of your heart and you start to sink and you go through that storm, you don't reach out. It says Jesus reached out and he grabbed Peter by the hand. Peter's like, where else am I going to go? There's nothing in this world that can sustain me like you. The manna of the world is only good for today, and I'm going to be, it's like Chinese food. I'm going to be hungry in an hour. When you have Jesus, that empty hole that you have inside is full, and it is filled forever. Not just today. And you wake up tomorrow, you're hungry. For today and tomorrow and however many years I got left, and forever and ever. And us sitting here right now is so temporary. In a few years, I'm going to be dead. Hopefully, several fews. And then this is over. And the only only thing that I can take with me is Jesus Christ in you. I will not take my 401k account with me. I will not take my cars with me. I will not take anything that I have, all of my accomplishments, I will not be able to take any of them with me. The only thing I can take with me to paradise is the love of Jesus Christ in my heart and you. That's the difference between a crowd mentality and a disciple mentality. A crowd mentality is like, what is Jesus going to give me? I don't want Jesus Christ. I want Jesus claws. I want to rub the bottle. I want Jesus to pop out. I want you to make my life better. That's what the Jews wanted. That's what the crowds wanted. And a disciple says, I want to take you with me. Because the place we're going is so much better. Jesus says, I am the what is it? I am the manna. I am the bread of life. Feeding on Jesus Christ, like the manna, requires daily dependence. The world's just offering junk food. It's going to leave you craving more. But Jesus is the only thing that truly satisfies. But he takes it one step further. And now he talks about the cost of the bread. Back in verse 51, the bread that I will give for the life of the world is my flesh. It's his sacrifice. The bread of life is costly. It cost Jesus his life. And in return, he demands all of you. He doesn't want you to just taste him. He wants you to consume him and feed on him in your heart. When they saw the manna, they said, what is it? And when the crowd saw Jesus, they said, who are you? And how you answer that question is going to be what determines the rest of your life. Who do you say that I am? Jesus says, I am the bread of life. If you've been part of the crowd,